Howdy, folks. A big wave to everybody there. Today, stream 94. So, just a brief overview. If nothing else, just to give me exercise at doing this. So, I'm working on my own game. It's a multiplayer game. And wait a minute, this is too wide. There we go. So, it's not playable yet, but I really liked games such as Ultima 5 when I was growing up. So, my plan is to try to make a multiplayer version of a game in that genre with a lot of different things you can do. So the graphics are going to be pretty simple, pixel graphics, or pixel art graphics. And I'm going to try to focus my time on establishing a really good server backend with lots of automation and try to put content into the game. So the backend I want to be very robust, fault tolerant, always up and running. So let me show you the architecture. To that end, I want to have multiple copies of my game running, all simultaneously, so that if any one game server were to crash, or if I want to update the software, I can just take them out of the cluster and start up new ones in their place, and everything still stays running. Hey there, multiple pixels. Big wave right back at you. I have my emote now, so I'm really excited to use it. It's just a version, it's just me waving instead of the generic wave. So anyway, both the game clients and the servers themselves talk to each other through WebSockets, and I'm using a consensus algorithm called raft in order to get each server to have the same state. And there's another server called the orchestrator, which starts and stops the main game servers. So we're working on reconfiguration today. Probably going to be working on reconfiguration for next week or two. Hey there. I always forget how to say your name. It's the Epic Unknown. Yes, your name is like always makes me stop and think. Yeah, so server reconfiguration is going to probably take another couple weeks, but I'm going to try to jump into the raft portion at least to start with. So I've been doing a lot of research and trying to figure out the best way to approach this from different angles, and I think I'm ready to get into the raft part. So basically, we're going to be adding some new state variables to raft. So there's going to be, in addition to the current configuration, there's going to be a new configuration. And there's going to be a provisional flag. I don't know what else to call it, but something to tell us whether or not new servers are able to vote or not. Hey there, Romania Hate. I'm doing well. A big Raimu wave right back at you. So, right, new servers will join the cluster as non-voting members to begin with. So the non-voting membership, the server needs to process the log to find the last configuration command, because you can imagine it's just starting up. If it doesn't find one, it'll just default to this one that's set by the owner when it's set up raft. If the server isn't found in the configuration, it's going to act as a non-voting member. So it doesn't start elections, doesn't respond to vote requests, but otherwise it'll process the log normally. And what this means is it'll be able to catch up to the current cluster's state. Hey there, Rally Monkey. Big wave to Rally Monkey. So non-voting membership is how a server will first join the cluster. And then here, the API to start the configuration process will be, we provide raft with the new configuration. It'll set the provisional flag saying that this new configuration, the servers in the new configuration aren't allowed to vote. And then when those new servers have caught up, so when their match index reaches the same as the, reasonably close to what the leader's at, so that could be at the same index as the leader or close by, we'll transition to joint consensus. So joint consensus is we apply that joint configuration to the log, and I should say we clear the provisional flag. Clear provisional flag. Yeah, that emote is from Playing with Scissors. I haven't seen him yet this year, but shout out to Playing with Scissors for helping me set up my first emote. So we're going to clear the provisional flag when we go into joint consensus mode. And then it gets applied to the log, which means the cluster is going to replicate it. Once it's been committed, so separate majorities for both the old and the new servers are matching that new log entry, then we transition to new configuration. There we again apply another log entry for just the new configuration. Once that's committed, we step down. Stepping down basically means we revert to being a non-voting member, so we can no longer be leader or a candidate, and then we'll count on the orchestrator to tell the old servers that aren't in the new configuration to stop. This is quite a bit of work. I could keep going. There's more nuances here, but I'm starting to get the feel for this being about 4 hours of work for me. So that's where I'm. Actually, this might even be too aggressive. Maybe realistically, I'll get about this far today. But I kind of like having a little bit extra if I get through quicker, or if it kind of helps me for planning the next day. So I'm gonna look at yeah, I already had this open, so I am ready to work on raft again. So the first thing would be adding new state variables. So something that would prompt us to have a new configuration probably would be that we would I think it has to do with this. So when we first start up, in fact, let me make this a new section. How about we just say add new state variables, new procedure on startup. And then we'll just move this to, select those lines, move them up to there. In fact, let's move that up to there. Right, so the last configuration command, I worked on commands a little bit ago. So there's a single configuration command. These are the things that might appear in our log now. Single configuration. This I might get rid of because I might just reduce this to be joint configuration with a flag. But anyway, we'll scan through our log and we'll look for single config or joint config. Basically, the last one is the one that's currently applicable, right? Hold on, wait a minute. We actually don't know if it's committed or not. Let me think about this. So when a server first starts up, what does it set its commit index to? To 0, right? Actually, I should have had the algorithm standing by ready for me to look at it. Commit index. Okay, it initialized to 0. Okay. The question is, how do we know if when we start up, if we should be a voting member or not? I suppose when we first start up, there had better be a cluster leader, and it should learn about the cluster leader right away. So we'll have it assume that the last configuration is applicable until it hears back from a leader, and the leader will tell us the commit index of the cluster. Right? Sounds like a plan. In fact, let me put that in the notes. So begin as follower. Hopefully hear back from a leader before election timeout. If not, assume that assume the cluster itself is just starting, and then process the log to find the, well, actually let me think about this. We don't want to process the log to find the last configuration command until the commit index is, okay, I'll say each time commit index advances, process log to find that. Yeah, this sounds good to me. I don't even need to say this. Yeah, we'll hear. I don't even need to say this. Basically, we'll naturally either become leader or we'll hear back from a leader and our commit index will advance either way. And when it does, we will process the log to find the last configuration command and then from that we'll be able to set these variables. Sounds good to me. All right, so let me pin that file. So I suppose that means we'll make a test of processing the log and applying configuration commands. Yeah. We should only apply the last one. Hey there, bug found. 44 behind me. Are you seriously watching every video? Because I never really intended people to do that. I thought they would just pick and choose what they care about. Or maybe they would skip through them. Wow, such dedication. All right, so new test. Right, so it's apply last committed configuration. Well, that's a given. And specifically, let's make cases for the different things we might find. So single configuration, where we are either in the set or not. So how about apply config voting member single config. More than 44 behind. That's fine. You guys don't have to watch them. They're just there if you want to watch them. Non-voting member, and then we'll have some other cases here, right? So voting member joint config, non-voting member joint config. So we're going to have to construct a log. The simplest case would be we set up a log, then we have a pretend leader send out a message saying, yes, that log has been committed. Right, and then we should see what the side effects are. So this one is sort of covered by other cases. Let me remove that. These are really the new cases, right? We're a non-voting member in either single or joint config, or we're a voting member in a joint config. What's a way to test? Okay, first things first. Let's do non-voting member single config. Actually, these two maybe we can fold together. No, I want to see I want to see different side effects there. Okay, so what can I copy from? How about this one? Hey there, Kenkomatics. A lot of people from Adam's channel here. I was sad to hear that Adam was getting sick, that he wasn't going to stream today. He just came back too. It's so sad. I hope he gets well soon. Alright, so do I need this stuff? I don't think I do. Oh, this isn't really this is not really what I want, is it? No, I do want the... Okay, I got it. So we'll just have a single entry. And here's where we have to manufacture the command that goes with it. I can take that from log entry tests, right? So from the serialized ones, like this one. So let's form the command. Oh, I didn't want provisional. Let's just do single. Do I have log? I don't have log entry. Log entry. Right, so single configuration command. IntelliSense is catching up. There we go. It took it a while. All right, so there's that. This should just move up there. This is redundant. There we go. So it's a single configuration command. Here are the instance IDs. Actually, this does matter, right? To be a non-voting member, we don't want to be in the set. So this and the leader has to match. So let's say it's, well, actually I'm not going to use these IDs. For all these other tests, we're using like a standard set of IDs in setup here. Yeah, these ones. So if that's the cluster and we want it to be non-voting, that means we need to not be in that set. So let's set our configuration. Is that how it's set? Yeah, because for become follower, we do like a set configuration, mobilize server, which does set configuration. No, it's part of mobilize now, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Oh, it's server right, okay, got it. Server configuration dot self instance ID. So we need to say like, if we are server 2, and then we have a log entry where 2 has been removed. Where this should just be entry. And the follower takes what? A leader and a term number. So let's say 5 is the leader. And term is, I don't know, 6 to match the configuration command. So when is it applied? It's applied when we become a follower, so that's part of this act. What's the assert then? I think we'll just have a way to peek in and look at it. So we'll say expect true. Hey, the bug found. In the web server plugin video, you get a dialog error when loading an invalid DLL. Did you ever fix that? That was a long time ago. I'd have to look back and see what it was. I'm pretty sure I fixed it. Pretty sure I did. If I didn't in the video, it was either because it was at the end of the stream and I was saving it for later, or it could have been that it wasn't important at the time. But if I ever get a dialog error when loading a invalid DLL, I usually just try to fix the DLL so it's valid. But if I wanted to know why it wouldn't load, there's a couple things I can check. Yeah, I probably fixed it, I just don't remember. So we'll expect the server, we'll have a get is non-voting member. How about that? Actually, I can make another one. Let's have a config where we are a voting member. So we just add this back in here. Actually, I want to make sure that this gets applied. So if this is the default, in fact, let's be explicit about that, so that someone reading this test knows and doesn't have to. The dog is making a weird sound. Doesn't have to look at the setup to know that. So that basically it's matching there, and here as well. So here it's apparent that we remove 2, and here we'll remove, let's remove 11. So it'll still be a voting member now. So it's, actually let's turn, I don't like having negative logic. Let's say is voting, and then expect false here. So if I just add this and then make it compile, then we can continue with our test-driven development. Yay! So server. In the concrete API here, I get to add ways that the test framework can reach in and see things. Shouldn't this be const as well? Actually, all of these should be const. Why did I not make these const? Really should. Set, no, get is, that is const. I don't know, I guess I just got lazy. Alright. Return an indication of whether or not the server is a voting member of the cluster. I might have to go turn the heat up in a second. It's really cold. All right. Git match index. I broke those by making them const, so let's fix that. All right. So same thing. We're entering a critical section. So there's where our cluster configuration is. So this is a good place to add it. Is voting member. All right. So we just need to add that. Where to add it? I don't know. How about near the instances? Cluster configuration. Here we go. Actually, maybe let me put it right here. Well, maybe not. It doesn't really matter where I put it. It's just where it feels right to have it. How about near here, where these other variables that are more related to the algorithm are? Let's just assume that we are a voting member, until we see a configuration that we're not in. Okay. This indicates whether or not the server is allowed to run or election to be leader of the cluster. Or vote for another server to be leader. All right, so ready to compile, I think. Hopefully I didn't break it. And this is IntelliSense needing to catch up. All right, so our handy dandy test explorer here. Run all of the tests, so it should fail, right? There we go. So it is saying that it's a voting member when it shouldn't be. I did not fix it. Do you remember which video that was bug found? Or which stream that was? I'd like to look back and see. Hey there. Zleka-we-go? How's it going? IntelliSense needs to catch up. Come on, if I reload it, we'll speed things up. There we go. Don't care about the good lens updating. Okay, anyway. So, let's go implement the voting membership stuff. So, this flag we just added, we need to actually set it correctly. So, the idea here is that when we become a follower, we're getting the commit index. Actually, now that I think about it, we need to include that here, don't we? Yes. Let's just have it default. There's a leader commit index. Let's have it default to the mock. We have a mock, yeah, mock log entries size. Basically, the default will be the leader will say everything in the log is committed, and then we can have it change it later if we want. And there's some other variables here too, right? Yeah, previous log index. Yeah, let's make the term default to the same term. Actually, no, that's stored in the mock log, right? So we'll say if mock log entries empty. It's one thing, otherwise it's another thing. Hey there, Moto Gaming 2K 2019. Nice name. Very appropriate name. So if we had no entries, the term is always 0, right? And then the same thing for the previous index. Otherwise, the previous index should be the same number. This is just some defaults we should do when we pretend to have a leader contact us. So this is a test that's failing, right? Right. So when we become a follower, that's by the leader telling us that this entry here has been committed. So this entry is a single configuration command where our instance number is not there. So when our commit index advances, we need to go through the new log entries and finding the last configuration command, apply it. Size T being unsigned annoys you? I'm sorry. It seems natural to me because you can't have, in the real world, you can't have a negative number of anything. So like the size of something, really, it's either 0 or higher. It makes sense to me, but I'm sorry it annoys you. If it annoys you, don't use it. You are, everyone can be a developer and everyone can decide, hey, I don't want to use size T anymore. Global search replace size T to int. Problem solved. All right. Yes, so to make this work, whenever our commit index advances, we need to do something. Right here. Actually, I wonder if I should... I have two places where I do this, right? I should refactor that out, and then there's one place where we can process log entries. Yeah, let's do that. Let's refactor this out first. So, what are we going to call it? Hold on. They're both called from the implementation, so we'll make a method called what? Advanced commit? Advanced log? No, that's too generic. Advanced commit. How about just advanced commit index? I'm terrible with names. Underflow goes up to some big number. Yeah, gotta be careful about decrementing a size. You don't want to decrement a size when it's 0. This is true. I actually would, in those cases where it might underflow, I usually use an int, and even if it should be a size, just to catch stuff like that. Which is fine. That's the cost of that, is you might have to do some casting to and from between int and size T. Usually when I use size T, there's no risk of underflow. So if there's subtraction or decrementing, you're better off with int. I do agree with that. Or you need to put it in a bunch of conditionals. I have a few of those in this code, and I don't remember exactly where they are. But I'll have a conditional before I do a subtraction saying, well, only do it if one's at least as big as the other. Okay, so we're going to advance to, in this case, it's share message details leader commit, right? And then this is going to be the body of advanced commit index. So let's maybe put it near that guy. IntelliSense is being slow today. Assume leadership. Okay, this is maybe a good spot. The index is a size T, yes. New commit index. Sorry about the size T. It's like we go. Sorry that annoys you. Now I'm gonna, every time I write size T, I'm gonna think, oh, this sucks for Zlekwigo. Zlekwigo. Alright. Am I saying your name right? Zlekwigo? I hope so. Okay, so what do I want to say? What does this do? Update the commit index of the log. Processing all log entries between the previous commit index and the new commit index. Oh, 26. Okay, let me clip that. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna take this straight out of Yata. I use this for Twitch chat, And so that's what it's going to look like here in the notes. So go back and check out the invalid DLL issue. And it looks like that. There we go. Let me get the actual link too. Paste text only. No, actually, yeah, I don't want a internal viewer. All right. So new commit index. Should document this. It's cold and so my fingers are slow. That's what annoys me. It's when it's cold and my fingers are cold and I type slower. Okay, this is the index to which to advance the current. Okay, this is poorly written. This is the new value to set for the commit index in the log. Commit index, that's all we need to say, right? Okay, so I'm going to look for where this is set again. Right there. So it's advance commit index. In this case, it's index first. This is when we're the leader. The other one was when we were a follower. Okay, so right now, we're just telling the log we can commit it. In addition to this, actually, you know what? That means that we can ask the log what the commit was last time. So I can have another set of tests here. We can have it apply when hold on, let me think about this. Yes, so we can say apply config when committed. And then we can have a version when it's already committed and we start it up. Hold on, maybe that's not valid. No, it should be valid. The commit index, by definition, can never go back, right? So a server can start up and look at its log and say, previously when I was running, we committed up to n. It should never be less than n. It should be n or greater, right? So I can make these test cases, another version of it would be on startup. I'll fill that in a moment. I just don't want to forget. Term. I don't have that in the notebook. Good point. So I need to add the raft terms to the notebook. Add raft terms in notebook. So in the meanwhile, the where did I put it? A couple streams ago? I should just repeat those links here again. So if you look up raft, or you go to raft.github.io, or you go to one of the white papers, they define term in here as actually they don't here. Yeah, it's sort of, it's such a basic term to the guy who invented this that he didn't really define it in this summary, so you kind of have to look where it's first described. Would that be up here in overview? Blah blah blah. Okay, let's search for it. Terms. Okay, here we go. Right, so here's the really nice definition of it. Time is divided into terms. Each term begins with an election. So basically every time the cluster elects a new leader, or basically whenever an election is started to make a new leader, you start a new term. And these blue areas are the election periods. So you can have a term that never gets a leader because before a leader could be picked, someone else started a new election. And that can come about if you don't get a majority vote for any one server. But so normally though, a term will be all changes to the cluster state that happened while some server maintained leadership. and then it flips over usually when the leader dies or you take down the leader, right? But it can also happen if the leader gets really slow or the network gets partitioned. So I'll add that to my notebook later. Thanks for pointing that out. All right. Yep, like presidency term. You got it. I should have said that at the beginning, but I for some reason I just naturally jumped into the long-winded explanation. I don't know why. Okay, so I need to add other definitions, like what does it mean to commit? What is a log, right? What the heck is a cluster? I need to add all these things. So let me actually put that in. Actually, that's all captured by raft terms, right? I'll put in quotes to remind myself that it's more than one term. That's a category of terms. Well, you can think of it as in other governments, it would be whenever the government changes, right? In any way. Or you can think of it as the new year. Although that's sort of bad because that's an arbitrary period of time. In raft, a term could actually last forever if the leader never stops. All right, so right, I was going to put it here. And we can do this also. Actually, I'm talking to myself, sorry. I'm thinking that later when we handle the on startup, that means that it already is committed, so we won't need to tell the lockkeeper to commit it again. We can ask the lockkeeper what is the commit index, and then only if it's not up to date we can tell it to commit. Or we can just tell the lockkeeper to commit always, and the lockkeeper can do nothing if we tell it to commit something that's already committed. That might be simpler. Okay, in either case, once it's been committed to the log, then we're sure not to lose the information if we were to crash, so it's safe to go apply the new configuration. Good morning, Mike. How's it going? So there's a little Raimu wave out to you, Mike. And shout out to Mike, by the way. Mike is working on a game called Thrusty Ship, and it's releasing this month. And it's a Unity-based platformy arcade game. Very cool. So he's working very, very hard on his game, and he's probably going to be streaming later today. I don't know, but if he does, you guys should go check it out. You don't know what the genre is. Yeah, that's cool. It's one of those games. I think it's fun. All right, let me think about this. So we're basically gonna loop, and we're gonna loop from the old commit. Let's cache the old commit here. Last commit index is that, and then we'll loop through. And we're gonna start at that and add one, and we'll go up to but including the new commit. And so, what do I say here? To make it work, all we really need to do right now is just see if, well, let's get the commit. So const auto, not the commit, the entry. And we'll ask the log for it by indexing it. And then we'll say if entry dot command, and we'll ask the command its type. Let's bring that out. What does that return? Just a string. Okay, so if it's, here I got to peek and see what did I call it. Single configuration, yes, single configuration. If it's single configuration, now here's where we can do the cast. Where did I do this actually? Did I do it here somewhere? Here we go. And do this thing, static pointer cast. This is like my version of runtime type information, sort of. That this that the command has an entry, and then using the string, you can kind of know what type it is. And then we can extract the command out of it. And then we can say, what do you call operator by name because of the pointer? Yeah, well, the other way to do it, which I didn't know I could do this until the autocomplete a few days ago showed me I could do it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. The other way you would do it is, because logkeeper is a shared pointer, you can do that, and then you can just index. I don't know which way looks better. Does that look better? I kind of don't like having the parentheses there with that star. But maybe it does. Maybe it is better. I could put them side by side and then judge. So, let's see. This feels better to me, but only because that's like a negative score for me to have to do that, the parentheses with the star. But I think it depends on personal preference. Yeah, this is sort of like the index operator. So I could instead have a method called get, but I kind of feel like that's redundant if there's already naturally an indexing operator. It's all personal preference. So the command here, the essential part is we need to apply it, right? So our configuration, our cluster configuration needs to be updated. So that's in the shared, right? Cluster configuration equals command dot arrow configuration. Are these the same type? Raft cluster configuration. Yep, okay, they are the same type. And then we have to check. Actually, let's make another helper here called on cluster configuration set, or on set cluster configuration. Just looked unusual C++ to you? Yeah, it's kind of unusual. I think most people do it the other way. I didn't even know I could do that until, yeah, like I said, autocomplete showed me I could. Okay, I've been grouping these sort of reactive functions together. Let's put it there. I'm putting this in another function because we could have the configuration set either through the log or through when it's when we're mobilized. Either way, I want to do the work here. So, what do I want to say here? The cluster configuration was just changed. Perform any logic. Actually, let's reword this. Perform any logic. Perform any work required whenever. Okay. When, not when, because it's happening now. Perform any work that is required when the cluster configuration changes. Okay, so there we will say, basically all we need to say is if our server index ID is in the cluster configuration, we're a voting member. So that makes me think of, we need to have another test, right? We might have to step down. When committed. Apply config non-voting member. Snail config when committed. as follower, and then we'll have one for when we're the leader, because that'll have an additional step where we have to step down. I might have to I might reword this later, because this test was just going to focus on stepping down. But just to, just want a placeholder for now. Okay, so server config self. We're going to look for that in the cluster configuration. So if instance IDs find this equals, this is sort of the awkward thing you got to do in C++. So whenever you search for something in a collection, to know if it is not in the collection, you compare the return value with the end iterator. Ugh. It'd be nice if there was like a contains or something like that, or has, but there is none. Not in C++, because C++ is weird. So if it is, then shared voting member. I could just assign this to be the result of this comparison, but I think this this is easier to read. Also gives us a place to do extra stuff. Like for here, we'll probably want to step down for the leader, like basically revert to follower. But I'm not going to do that until I have a test to make sure that it's required. This though should satisfy this test, right? Oh, I can just rerun my test here. It's interesting. It knew about the tests that needed to be rerun. Rerun them, please. Huh. Okay. I don't like that output, so I'm going to run it the old-fashioned way here. Oh, because we have a crash. Okay, let's run it in the debugger. Raft test, make sure there's no filter. Okay, there is a filter. Let's remove it. And run the test. In JS, to check if an element is an array, we check if the index is -1. Yeah, it's one of those. That's kind of like how it is in C APIs a lot of the time. But really, the more natural thing is to have a method saying has or contains or is a member of, right? It just kind of bugs me that modern language like modern C++ doesn't have that. Okay, some of these tests take a lot longer in the debugger, so it's really slowing things down. So I guess I should have used a filter. Oh, right, I forgot to have an abort. This is one of those tricks. In Visual Studio, you can tell it to stop on any exception, but VS Code, you can't, so the next best thing is to set a breakpoint on the abort function. And that was which test? This one. There. Okay, go. So there's the abort. Oh, it's deleting. What does it delete? It's deleting an incomplete type. Oh, there's a thread still running. Huh. How did that happen? I might have to go back to Visual Studio. It's breaking after the fact, and so it doesn't tell me where the exception was. It's just saying a structured exception handler. Something was thrown. It was a null pointer violation. System error, right? It's been a while since I've done this, so I should exercise my keep fit in Visual Studio. So here's the Visual Studio. It's just a normal build directory. CMake dot to update it, and then I just run the solution file after it updates, which might take a while since it's been a while. Well, thank you, SizzyQ. I think my code looks bad. If you think my code looks unbelievably clear and readable, I'm very flattered. But I guess we are all our own worst critic. I always think that my code is hard to read, and that's what I'm always trying to force myself to refactor them to make it look better. Maybe you were looking at some of the code I had that was already refactored. That might have been it. But thank you. I tend to write code that's hard to read when the first pass writing it, and then I have to go back and refactor the code to make it readable. If I consider getting condenser mic, I do have a condenser mic on. Well, I have a cheap condenser mic on these headphones. The reason I use a dynamic mic is because there's a lot of noise in the house with kids, and so this dynamic mic really cuts down on the background sound. Yeah, I have long names. That's true. Actually, when school's back in, I might switch mics because then it's usually really quiet while I'm streaming, and so I don't need to worry about the noise. Yeah, that's the difference, right? So there's a trade-off. I gotta speak directly into the mic, but you can't hear the background noise. If I had the other kind of mic, I could step away from the mic and not have so much problems. Okay, so let's run raft tests, shall we? So set this to be the startup project, and actually let me check to make sure I don't have any filter on it. I do not have a filter on it, so let's just go. So here it is. And there's the evidence of how superior Visual Studio's debugger is. It not only did it showed us where the null pointer is, we got all these other statistics too. Anyway, and so the command is empty. I thought I fixed that. Why would it be empty? So let's look up the call stack. Not there. Yeah, actually there. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay, we're shoot. So all these other tests that set up entries need to have some kind of default command. Can an entry not have a command at all? I guess we should handle that, right? A no-op entry. Yeah, so we really should do we should allow it to be null. That means everywhere that I dereference it, I need to have a guard. So basically skip it if it's a null command. Let's do that. Okay, so goodbye Visual Studio. Back to VS Code. Tell that to Hideo. Hideo doesn't like the long variable names and function names that I have. You're looking at the raft source code, the one already published on GitHub? Yeah, that's this code that we're looking at. Anybody else who doesn't know, all the stuff that's reusable, like the raft stuff, I put on GitHub. Open source, man. Alright, so getting my bearings again. The problem is in on this one, right? No, it wasn't that one. It was here. Advanced is right here. If entry.command is null pointer, continue. There we go. Why is that still running? All right, let's try again. Cool, so it's passing. Yay! That was the only problem. I needed to check for no-op commands. All right, good. So the voting, non-voting member flag is set. We should probably test that a non-voting member doesn't actually vote. So let's arrange that. Or should I fill in these other tests first? Well, I should at least have a placeholder. Let's have a placeholder for that. Where? Put it at the end, maybe? Non-voting member should not vote. Non-voting member should not vote for any candidate. So that's one part of it. The other part is it should not become elite. Should not start a new election. Why is there a no-op command? The algorithm talks about it. So one reason why you might have a no-op command, for example. It's I think they call it an optimization to help speed up read-only queries, is that when a leader first gets elected, they might commit a blank entry into the log to start his term, basically to have some log entry with the new term attached to it, so that it's this corner case that describes it here. So since the algorithm itself talks about there being a blank no-op entry, it gave me sort of license in my mind to allow the command to be null, and that is, by definition, the no-op entry. But I'm using it so that I can simplify the tests. So a lot of these tests that I already wrote talk about log entries, but they don't really care about what the command is. It's just to have an entry with a term set in it. And so the command being irrelevant, to make it simple, I can just make the default, which already is null pointer, a legitimate case, and then just let the code handle it correctly by skipping it, right? So yeah. How do I like Fira code so far? It's kind of growing on me. I like these custom ligatures. This one looks kind of cool. And I noticed there's a bunch of other ones, like if you have 3 stars in a row, it does that, which is kind of nice. The 3 equals in a row, not equal, it's kind of nice. Yeah, so far so good. You can ask how old I am. Will I tell you? I'll tell you roughly. I am over 40, but under 50. Somewhere in the middle. Can't you tell with my grayish beard? Actually, I guess you can't tell. Some people get gray hair when they're in their 20s. I'm old enough to remember 1200 baud modems, and there was no internet. That's how long ago I can remember. My first computer was an Apple II, and I programmed on Apple Basic. It had, what was it? 24 lines by 80 columns, or wasn't even 80 columns. Might have been 40 column. Man, ancient computers. It used to be that you wouldn't get blue screens. When your computer malfunctioned, it would just freeze. Everything would just stop. You'd have to hit Control-Alt-Delete, and that would instantly reboot, and your DOS would, if you had DOS, would be right back up. If you had a hard drive, if you didn't have a hard drive, your floppy disk would start spinning. Brings back those memories. Yeah, well, I'm talking about in the US, we had no internet for a long time, right? Not until I got out of college, or I was in college. That might be narrowing it down a little bit too much. All right, advance. All right, so we're doing okay so far. Let's fill this one in. This should already work. So it's a similar thing. It's just that we don't need to commit it. We will say it is already committed. So we do not even need to become a follower. It's simply by, well, become a follower, calls, mobilize. That's all we need to do. We'll mobilize and wait one loop, right? And then, yeah, okay, so we also need to tell the mock log what the commit index is. Okay. Should I have another corner case for where the commit index is not 1, but it's in the log? I should probably do that. So let's fill these in. So non-voting member, config on startup, and then we'll have, so this one's similar, only it's a non-voting member. So we remove its own ID from here, and it should be a false, right? And let's have another very similar case. Apply config non-voting member will be non-voting member after commit. So it's extremely long name, but the thing is, we'll put the command in the mock in the log, but we won't commit it yet, and we'll expect it's still a voting by default a voting member. Okay, so this is slightly different. So here, we'll put the entry in and we'll become leader. And what does leader need? Just a term number, so 6. And then, okay, we're already leader. So the act is that we need to issue issue responses saying that the that entry's committed. So that'll force the leader to commit it. So let me actually break this up into two different tests. When committed and when not committed. How about do not apply config non-voting member when not yet? Okay, let's say this is do, hold on. After single. Hold on, I'm getting myself confused. A will be, okay, yeah, so it's do not apply. Do not apply config non-voting member after remove the after commit. The thing is we're not supposed to apply it because it's not committed. All right. Do not apply it. Okay. Yes. Okay. There's a little bit of stuff I need to do here, but I need to take a quick break. Just a bathroom break, all right? So I'll be back in a minute or two. Hello, I am back. I'm thinking I actually want a convenience method here. Because I'm going to call this from other places. What we want is to have the leader commit something. We need to pretend that other instances are responding. I'm just thinking, which instances is the leader expected to send to? Should it be sending to the new configuration? I think so. That means instance 2 is not counted. Oh, that's our self. So maybe I don't. Maybe I don't want to. I need to be very careful here. 2 is not counted as towards the majority, right? So it's committed when we get 3 out of 4, not 2 out of 4 of the followers. Right. So, well, actually, I can still make it a helper, but let's not for now. I do have this code written in one of the other tests, though. It's when, here we go, this exact one right here. This doesn't look right, though. Oh, this is from the follower's perspective. This is the leader. Here we go. Yeah, this loop. I wanted this loop. That is green screen? Yeah, but it's actually blue. So that's what it looks like. And yeah. There's even more, but I'm kind of only showing a subset of the field. And that's for family privacy. I don't have my own office. If I had my own office, I wouldn't need a screen. I could just show you the cool view out of the window or something. But I'm in like a shared area in the house, so yeah. I copied that, right? And I was going to paste it into the new test. So it's do and do not. Here we do want to commit it. Oh, that's kind of a lot. Actually, let's look at this. I feel like making a constant here. Term. And then we can say term everywhere. Do the servers vote on each change in state? Sort of. It's not called a vote for a state change, it's called an append entries result. But it's essentially the same. Where did I close it? Oh, no, right here. So, looking at this, that's log compaction. Sorry, I don't have any way of, I don't know how to bookmark this. So I have to look at it, search for it each time. Zoom this in a bit. You guys see all that? Okay, so if it's a election, it's called a vote. So it'll be vote granted. If it's an append entries, which is used for state changes, it's not called a vote, it's just there's a success flag, and then right down here for leaders, one of the rules is that, well, you advance the match index. Where does it say that? Where does it say advance the match index? Oh, right here. It's a little bit complicated. So you have to advance there's a next index and a match index, but then match index is important for the commit index. So you advance the match index for every follower that responds that has successfully appended an entry. And then when, this is a bit complicated, but essentially it says when a majority of servers have matched a commit that's greater than the current commit index, and you're in the current term, then you can advance the commit index. So they're sort of still voting because you have to have a majority, but it's not called a vote. It's called just that each server tells the leader what it's matched up to, and then when a majority has matched up to a certain point, you can advance the commit to match that, to match the match. So it's the same, they just don't call it a vote, they call it a match. So here we go. The match index will be 1. Oh, right. I wanted the more complicated one in here. So let me remove this part. Let me think about this. Yeah, okay, it is, we want to be particular. So, actually no, we don't need to. We can just count them. So I can keep that part. Let me think about this. Yeah, up, down to here. But I need those variables. I don't need the successful count, I just need a count. Log n. Log n. Oh, but it's not logarithm, it's a journal log. I see log n, I think natural log, right? Or log base 10 or whatever. Okay, so yeah, the thing is that we're going to apply it as soon as the majority of the new configuration, so it's 3 out of 4. So if response count is greater than or equal to 3, then we expect that we are a non-voting member, but until then we're still a member. The configuration hasn't been applied yet. Like that. And we don't need an assert. So we don't respond to ourselves. All of these other servers will respond though, and it's only going to be the ones in the new configuration. Maybe we should have a check for that as well. So yeah, to make the check for that, let's make sure the entries, the messages received are already cleared. Okay, good. So become leader. Right, we need to wait to see what append entries are sent out. Actually, yeah, I should be doing that anyway. This code. Right, we need to advance a certain amount of time to make sure that the messages received are correct. So that's exactly what I need. I need that here. I guess that's part of the act, right? Well, this is part of that. The act. Right, we will expect that we get an append entry sent to only this set and not, well, let's remove another server. Let's remove 7 as well. That means the majority is going to be 2 or more. And that we should not see anything sent out to 7. We should only see things sent out to 5, 6, and 11. So we'll expect false that if we take this set and we try to find the receiver, that it should be, okay, I don't like the double negative. We'll say true, that that's not equal to this dot end. Again, with a weird way of seeing if something is in a set. So basically, this is saying that the receiver instance number should be in the set of instances IDs in the new configuration. And I don't really... I guess we can also expect that that's true. That these are equal. That it's an append entries. That's all we need to say. I don't need to check this other stuff. Other tests check that. We should... Well, hold on. Let's not expect it. Let's just put it inside the condition. If it's that, then expect this to be true. There we go. I like that better. And what? Okay, that should be like that, right? So of all the append entries messages sent, they should all go to only these servers. And once we get 2 responses that match that index, then the leader steps down. Or, no, the leader doesn't step down. The leader basically says, "Hey, I'm not really a voting member anymore." Or should it be a non-voting member right away? No, it's still a voting member until it's applied, until it's committed. Yes. But internally, it knows it's committed once. Let me look at the algorithm. It was very specific about this. It was either the thesis or the white paper. It'd be stepped down. Does not count. Something like that. Here we go. I think this is it. The cluster leader may not be part of the new configuration. In this case, the leader steps down once it has committed the entry. There'll be a period of time when the leader is managing the cluster. It does not include itself. It replicates log entries, but does not count itself. Okay, so it doesn't count itself in majorities right away. And as soon as it's committed, it steps down. So we can actually check that here. We can say expect, or was I going to make that a subject of another test? Oh, I guess I didn't have a placeholder for it. Let's just do it here. So expect that it is a follower at this point, right? Is it as soon as it gets a majority? Once it has committed the entry, okay. There we go. So we expect it right away. So it's raft server election state follower as soon as we get a majority. So that's server.get election state. Until then, it should be a leader. Cool. Dog barking. All right. Let's try this out. This is going to be a bit of work to make this one pass. Each step, each one of these use cases, each one of these is like a set of requirements, or each test is both a set of requirements and a use case, and it kind of elicits more code that needs to be written to make the test pass. That's the whole point of this test-driven development. Right. So actually, we have 3 tests that fail. Let's do the easiest one first. Oh, we have actually a crashed. Let me fix the crash first. So copy that. Let's see where it crashed. Try in VS Code first. Okay. Did that not work? It didn't work. So back to Visual Studio we go. Build that guy. This is one thing oh, actually, I guess this does work. Never mind. Gtest filter equals that. And then go. There's our null pointer exception. Oh, wait a minute. What happened to the command? Oh, I moved the command. I can't do that. No, we can't do that. Hold on. Stop debugging. Maybe I'll keep this around minimized. Might need him again. And when you move something, you can't continue to use it. So I moved that command, but then I was using it down here. So really, I'm only using it for the instance IDs. Maybe what I'll do is I'll capture this separately. So let's say const auto new instance IDs. We'll just make a copy. And then we'll just, I should have been doing that before anyway. That's just being dumb. All right. Could checking the all exceptions at the bottom help? Good point. I didn't really think about that. Let me undo this and see. If you're right, I'll feel really dumb that I didn't think of that. You're probably right. Yep. Okay. I feel appropriately dumb now. So thank you, bug found. You found a bug in my process. I guess I didn't think of that because I'm used to in Visual Studio here. This is what I just assumed. That there's this exception settings. And I know it's kind of small type, but that you should be able to break this down. And because VS Code doesn't have this, I just assumed that you couldn't pick and choose what you stopped, but I didn't really stop to consider that that's really just a much less granular version of this. It's just a one or true or false, whereas this is a lot of different options. But you're right. So maybe I don't need Visual Studio anymore. Goodbye, Visual Studio. At least for this purpose. All right. Anyway, let's reapply these changes. And I'm going to keep that flag on. Actually, no, I'm not, because there are some exceptions that get caught, and they're not really. Well, actually, let's run and see if we actually get them. Nope. So I think it fixed it. Wonder why that test takes so long up here. 2 seconds to run this one. That shouldn't actually happen. I should... Actually, let me really quick, let me see what's going on there. I don't remember if maybe that test does take a long time. Oh yeah, this advances the time quite slowly, doesn't it? Still, it shouldn't take so long, though. Wonder if it's just a performance issue. Let me look into that later. Might need to look at that with more tools. Now look into performance of that one. Why is the project name in Latin? I have a good reason for that. Whenever I try to find names for things like websites or games, I don't know if it's just me or if it's just bad luck, but I can never find a name that isn't already taken by something else. So I kind of gave up at some point trying to find a name for my game that wasn't taken by another game or a band or a book or something. And I thought, well, I've had success with this before. I'll take a phrase that sort of, applies to the game idea and ask Google Translate to tell me what it is in Latin. And so I took the phrase all realms, and in Latin it's omnia reina. I picked all realms because one, what do you call it? A theme that I want to have in the game is that there will be lots of different worlds and that you'll be able to jump between them. And each world will be distinct in some way. I might even go so far as to have the game's interface change. So you might be in one world where it's a grid. In another world, it might be a hex grid. In another world, it might be 3D. Who knows? So yeah, I picked Latin because I found that Latin phrases and names are not generally taken by books, games, or bands, and so they're kind of a way to get a name that no one's picked yet. Let's see, server. All right, yeah, we'll look at that later. Why is that so slow? In the meantime, right, this is failing because we expected it to fail. This one is easier to fix, I think. This is just to apply the configuration on startup. So let's do that. We'll make that one pass next. You often call projects Latin phrases? Well, you're smart because, yeah, they're not as popular as English phrases. Probably other languages also have this benefit, right? So I bet if I like looked up a phrase and translated it into Spanish or, you know, an even less frequently used language. Hey, thanks for the follow, Shadow. Swahili or something like that, right? Nintendo? Yeah. Well, I don't know about taking, like, is Nintendo even an actual word? Or is it just the name of, is it like a made up name? I don't even remember. But yeah, that's the idea. Although if it's like a trademarked word, you could be in kind of sticky territory, right? I don't know about that. So I just picked a generic phrase that, you know, no one's going to trademark, and translated it. Okay, so this test, apply on startup. This one, the key is on startup. So on startup, we need to process the log. So that's on mobilization. So after we start everything, maybe even before we start our worker thread, right? Yeah, so right here we can say impl on set cluster configuration, right? So that will go and, oh wait a minute, no. Sorry, it's this one, advanced commit index. We'll advance it to whatever the log keeper says is the current index. Oh, we don't have a way to get the current index. Well, we should have a way to get that, shouldn't we? Let's add that. Actually, hold on, the log doesn't know that. What would, though? Our persistent state? No, but the algorithm says we don't persist that. So maybe we can't do it on startup. Yeah, it says it's a volatile state. There must be some reason. I kind of, if I don't know, if it's not intuitive, but the algorithm says something specific, like explicitly, I tend to favor that there must be some good reason. I just don't know what it is. So that means we can't do this. This use case is not even valid. That saves me a bit of time. Well, you would think that even if if the leader tells a follower what the commit index is, and then the follower were to crash, and then start back up, that if it had persisted the commit index, it would, the worst case would be that it might not have saved the commit index, and so it might have a stale commit index. But it should never, let's say the leader said index 10 was committed. Well, you can never, once that happens, you can never go back to anything less than 10 being committed, because the log is, what's the word? It's write once. After the commit point, you can't rewrite things that have been committed. So you should be able to, that's maybe a good question for the, for anybody who's more familiar with the algorithm would be, why do we not persist the commit index? I don't know. Maybe I could send the author a tweet about that. Let me think about that. So, question, why is commit index not persistent? Must be some good reason. Serial, that's the right word. So it can advance, but it can never go back. The only thing I can think of is perhaps the algorithm inventor, whose name, by the way, is in that. I should be using his name. Diego Ungaro. So Diego might have some good reason why you might want to start. Maybe it's that you might start a new log, and the commit indexes might reset. He talks about log compaction, but I haven't really read into that section yet. Maybe log compaction talks about the log index, the commit index going back again. Yeah, because if you look, the persistent state has the log, and it talks about you can compact the log, so maybe that means the indexes can roll back when you do that. I don't know. All right, so let me reevaluate what tests are not passing. Probably just the one that's difficult, right? No, we got two. Oh, they're the same, but one's when it's committed, one's when it's not. Is this correct? That should be true. That should be true. Actually, is that implicitly tested by this? Maybe this is redundant. Actually, I think this is redundant. The test is redundant. It's sort of a subset of this because, well, we don't check this one before any responses come back, but we at least check on the first response. It should still be a voting member and a leader. So it's just a difficult case that we have to do. Fun. Right, so we have problems, right? It sent out a message to something that it shouldn't have. It should have reverted to a follower at some point, and it did not. Actually, shouldn't it have failed on 2755 as well? Actually, no, that I do have code already for that, right? Because advance commit index is called from the leader. Right here. So it at least will change the voting member status, but it's not doing the other thing. So one thing at a time. How do we tell it not to? I think the answer is that once it's being told to append it, right? It's when it's processed, I believe. No, hold on. The white paper did talk about this, that it uses it as soon as it gets it. It's in chapter 6. Yes. No, actually no, not 6. In the thesis it was 6. Here it was somewhere else. Oh, here it is. Okay, it is 6. Never mind. A server always uses the latest configuration in its log, regardless of whether the entry is committed. Right, so yeah, so that means we do need to process on startup, which is caught by this test, right? Because we put it into the mock log before it even starts up. Here's where we start up, so we expect it to process it on start. So let's put that code back in there. It has to process them, but it's not committed though. So it's slightly different. So we have advanced commit index, which processes the log. We should also have one that processes them. Okay, it's slightly different. So it's advanced, not commit index, but what's the other? I guess it would be match index. Hold on. When it gets put in the log. When will it get put in the log? When it gets matched, right? So it's advanced match index. Update the match index of the log, processing log between the previous match index and the new match index, right? New value is set for the match index. It gets a little complicated when we have to roll back though, right? Let's say a configuration command got put in the log and then it got taken out because it didn't get committed and a new leader got elected. Decided not to change the configuration. That means we might have to actually replay the log from every point. I mean, from the beginning to recover. Not looking forward to doing that, but I should have a case for that. Let's just have a case. Follower revert configuration when rolling back before config. Let's shorten this up. Not looking forward to writing that test or that code, but I'll do it later. Don't want to forget though. So advance, right. So we'll call this from mobilize. One place. Right here. Advanced match index. That's actually, hold on, we don't know if it's the match index. Let me think about this. That's also not persistent, right? Only the current term is. Well, the log is, but it's not match. What do we hold in this state? Last index, I guess. Then that's just a cache. Let's call this advanced last index. Or how about we might want to be able to support rollback later, so we'll call it set last index. And we will replace this code here. Sound good? Or rolling back to, this is not match. This should be last. Possibly rolling back. Previous state. I guess we could make it, we could help out by having when we store it in the log, we could store the previous configuration, and then we could process it backwards. New last index. Shouldn't everyone wait for the configuration change to be committed? That's what I initially thought, but the algorithm is very explicit about it. Right, it says Says the server always uses the latest configuration as log regardless of whether it's committed. It probably has to do with the fact that until you apply, until you use it, you might not be able to respond to a vote, and a vote might be required, even if it's not committed yet. I don't know. I trust Diego. Let's trust Diego. There's got to be a good reason. I just can't. I can't think of what it is. Last index. Hey there, Rebel Shade. How can you debug C in VS Code? I wish I had a video for that. Let me make a note to make one. I'll try to show what I know. Make a video about debugging in VS Code. So, for me, it just worked, but it might be because I made sure to install this, and also I'm using CMake, and CMake, you can tell it what your tools are with the active kit down here. So I've told CMake tools that I'm using Visual Studio Community 2017, and so I believe it configures a bunch of things, including debugging, so that along with the C++ extension, when you're in the debugging configuration and you say cpp vs dbg, it just kind of knows, you know, which version of Visual Studio, where the executables are, and it kind of just works. So it might be that the problem you're having is you have not configured VS Code to find your tools, or you might be using the wrong type for the debugging. Yeah, so for Visual Studio, it's cpp vs dbg. And you either do a launch, or you can do a attach if it's already running. So that'd be my guess, is that the tools aren't set up right, that it doesn't know how to launch Visual Studio. And my only recommendation would be to, if you don't mind trying it out, try using CMake tools with a very simple CMake configuration. And for that, I do have a video where I kind of walk through setting up. It's like a 30-minute long one where it's mostly focused on Google Test Framework, but I also show setting up a project with CMake, and using that, you should be able to debug it. Yeah, I hope you find out what the problem is. That's really frustrating when tools aren't working for you. I know how that feels. Okay, so right now, it's just to keep the code like it was. It's just that we store it, right? And then every time it's advanced, we will call that function. So it's advanced here. So it's set last index, and then we call that. Right, so that makes sense. It's only advanced. Hold on, that was for follower. Also the leader, when the leader has, then there's an append. Here we go. So here also, ample set, and then here we just add. Well, I can just do this and then just say plus. Like that. Okay, so I should probably test that to make sure nothing else broke. The only one still failing should be the new tests. Okay, the new test. Cool. So that means all our work is now focused on this set last index, right? So between, I guess we'll do the same thing as we did for this one, is we record what the last one was, and then we'll advance. So last index. How about, think about this. It's unfortunate that it's called last. How about it's going to be first entry to process. Should be the last index plus 1, right? And this is right now assuming we're not supporting rollback yet. So then I can just simply do this. Actually, let's copy this whole thing. So it's first entry to process up to and including the new last index. The last index, right? Then we get the entry. If it has no command, we skip it. Otherwise, if it's a configuration, then we are applying it, right? So that's this part, and we don't. What's this on set? Voting member. Okay. Right. So essentially, this got moved here, so that we don't need to do this here anymore. Right. There's still a placeholder here, so basically a trigger will do work that was awaiting the configuration to be committed. So we don't have any tests yet that require that, so really got moved to there. Just want to make sure that it's not actually... Okay, that's different, right? So I was going to say it's not actually sending out messages to server 7 anymore, which is, okay, it got past that. So now it's getting down to here. Oh, this logic is wrong, right? It should still be, it should right away be a non-voting member, right? It should be a non-voting member way up here. I don't know if I like that name anymore because we're applying it locally right away. We're doing more than just testing how it's applied. We're also testing at what point do we step down and... Yeah. And we're doing some things when we're committed and other things when we're not. And it's not even committed. I need to go through and fix these names in a second. For now, it's sort of awkward to check a side effect at this point in act, which, yeah, I'll fix this in a bit. But basically, it's going to stay a non-voting member from the start. The difference on commit is it steps down, it becomes a follower once the majority of the cluster commits it. Okay, let's just get this to pass, and then I'll fix the names and other things. This should get it a little bit further, right? Right, so it's getting down to where it's not stepping down as a leader. This part, right? 2760. This one's failing. So this is when the majority of the cluster. So that's in this commit stuff right here, right? So it's specifically if we are a leader. So if shared election state equals election state leader, and we get a majority. Well, and we're not in the configuration set, so this awkward compare. So it would be I suppose we just looked straight into the command, right? Actually, we should be looking at our current configuration. Cluster configuration, find our entry. It's shared server configuration. Come on, IntelliSense. Oh, I misspelled shared. That might be why. Self is not found, so it equals end. So this says if we're a leader. Oh, it's instance IDs. If we're a leader and we're not in the instance ID set, and then the majority is reached, then we have to step down. Hey there, Alchemist Ubi. Raimu wave right back at you. My new emote. Okay, so yeah, majority check. So it's well, no, it is committed, so we don't need a majority check. If we're the leader and okay, it's committed. We're a leader and we're not in the set anymore. Then we step down as leader, right? Revert to follower. There we go. That's all we need to do. Take a picture of my doggy? Good idea. Hold on, let me grab your messages. Will this work? I'm using Yada. I'm not sure if this will work. Let's see what happens. Oh, I just lost your name, but we'll say idea for emote. There we go. When he barks, people can spam it. Yeah, good idea. There we go. Actually, I'm a purist here. I think those should be bullets. Good idea. When I get a second emote, maybe I can add that. I'm only allowed to have one emote right now. I'm not a popular streamer, so only one emote for me. Okay, that's built. Let's see if it worked. Yay! I'm feeling like this is a good point to check in. What's cool is that the emote got approved by Twitch pretty quickly, even over the holidays, the New Year's holiday. They still got it within like 2 or 3 days, which is nice. Okay, so what we essentially added. That wasn't really. Let me check this in separately. This should have. This is just a fix of 2 methods should have been constant. They weren't. Check that in separately. This and this. So server make get next index and get match index const. Okay, that out of the way. We added the concept of if a server is a voting member or not. And that was for, so we're processing the log now to find if we're a voting member. Actually, we should also be, yeah, what if there is nothing in the log? I needed to have that test case as well. So let me, yeah, I think I'm not done yet. I need to add some placeholders. Yeah, it's not when applied, it's on startup. So some new placeholders. So non-voting member from startup, no log. No config in log. So I need to handle that. But anyway, with placeholders are fine, just means I have to fill them in later. Right, so it was all about, it's all about, okay, there's also the stepping down. We're no longer leader, right? This part. So we added two things, non-voting membership and stepping down as leader. You want to buy a computer for playing games and do Unreal Engine C++ programming? Cool. Go for it, man. And then do it live on Twitch. So add non-voting membership and have leader step down if well, we'll say that. Process log and recognize when the server is a non-voting member. When it is not in the cluster configuration. Well, not in the server set in the cluster configuration. Make a non-voting member leader step down once the configuration is committed to the cluster. It's cool, now that we have enough of the algorithm mentioned, I can use the algorithm's terminology and makes my log messages sound cooler. You envy my knowledge. You want to be 40s already? It's not about being in the 40s. It's about just collecting knowledge. Just never stop learning. If you stop learning, then you'll get older and you won't have the knowledge. That's what you want to avoid. All right. Oh yeah, I wanted to go back and fix these names, so it's not when committed here. Or did I? Yeah. What was I doing here? I removed 11. Oh, I think I just didn't do the commit part here. That's what it was. Wait, can you hear the doggy in the background? Yeah, it's when I'm not talking, the mic will pick her up. My noise gate is not quite high enough for this loud, excited dog to become unheard. Okay, let's see. When committed. It's not when this is not even valid. It should. This is not even a correct test. This test doesn't make sense because it should be applied on startup even before it's committed. So it should be explicitly saying 0 is should be a non-voting member right away, because this is not even correct. We have to remove it out of the set for it to be a non-voting. Oh no, it is a voting member. Well, okay. Here's one where it is, and then we'll have one where it's not. Apply config non-voting member. Config on startup. Yeah, there we go. So it's not committed. It should still be a not voting member. What exactly is raft? Yeah, it's a consensus algorithm. So where I'm using it is here, where in this, I call it a cluster, where you have multiple copies of the game server. It's not that each one has a different game or a different world. They all have exactly the same game. They're replicated. The reason for that is if any server dies, the other servers can take over, and so the players don't notice any kind of downtime. So yeah, I'm doing this because I want zero downtime in my game. I want to run enough servers so that I can take one down or one can crash, and it shouldn't cause the game to stop. The consensus algorithm is solving the problem of how do you make sure all of these servers have exactly the same state and they don't get conflicting state, like state that's different on the two servers. You know, it's one thing to have a server have information that the others don't yet have, but it's quite another for two servers to conflict. So the consensus algorithm prevents conflict. It allows you to have many servers that have non-conflicting state that marches forward in time. How could you do that when you have in-memory state? So it's not just in-memory state. There's a combination of in-memory and persistent state. So this is the white paper for raft. So they talk about that you have in-memory state, but you also have persistent state. So they depend on you saving the log, which is a sequence of state changes, and then you have to have these two variables also have to be persisted to avoid problems. But yeah, it's a hard problem. We're trying to use this algorithm to solve it. The algorithm is pretty doable, I think, because we don't really have to persist that much. We really don't have that many variables. There's just a bit of logic. It fits all on one page, but it's kind of compact. But that's why it's taking me weeks to do. But it's pretty cool. I think we'll be able to do it. Yeah, I think it is a hard problem to solve. But what's funny is you read this white paper, or you read the thesis that Diego wrote for it, and like the second chapter talks about the problem, and it says what's wrong with someone else's algorithm. And it says how, well, my algorithm's simpler. The raft consensus algorithm was designed to be simpler. Where does it say that? Designed for understandability. It must provide a complete and practical foundation that significantly reduces the amount of design work. It should be possible for a large audience to understand the algorithm comfortably. So it's a bit of a tall order. It's difficult to do, but Diego's objective in making raft was to make it understandable to more people. He talks about how this other algorithm, Paxos, is a lot even harder to understand than raft. And I mean, he does like studies on how many people figured out how to implement or explain the algorithm, like his to compared to. I mean, he's got lots of data. Pretty cool. If you like reading white papers, this is a pretty good one. Or you can look at his PhD thesis. Can't understand it? I think you could if you approached it step by step, slowly, and you might need a guide or an existing implementation to compare it to, but you can figure it out. The logs capture every change to the state, so he kind of reduces it to like if you were just to hold certain variables x, y, and z, that the log would be changes to these variables. So 3 is stored in x, 1, y equals 1, y equals 9, those are the log, and then when that's applied in that order, you get these things, right? Yes, I'm using your suggested font. Thank you, Endless. It's all growing on me, I guess. Yeah, so this is probably a pretty good diagram to explain what a log is, what the consensus does. You can see that there are like 5 layers here. Each one's a different server. They each have a copy of the log. They each have a state machine. They each talk to different clients, and they all have to agree ultimately on the log, which is basically a sequence of commands to build the state. And the state is what we really care about. In my game, the state will be where is every player, what items are in the world, any kind of thing, any kind of persistent state will be in the state machine. So our log is going to be a sequence of like the character moves to the left or to the right, or the character is jumping in the air, or whatnot. All of that will be a very, very long sequence of logs that'll actually build very, very quickly. So I'm already dreading having to make this run faster. Do you like arrow or not equal? At first I was kind of hesitant because I know that that's 2 characters, but it is kind of growing on me. I don't like that as much because I have to remember that that's what it really was, but that's habit. I do like that. That is visually pleasing, greater than or equal to. So it's growing on me. I like this font. So by the way, if anyone's interested to know more about that, there is a font that I'm using that Endless suggested. It is called Fira Code. And you can't just put it in your settings in VS Code. You have to actually download the font and install it. But if the font is installed on your OS, then when you pick it up and you enable these font ligatures, you get these cool, that's what a ligature is. It's the joining of two or more characters to form a different glyph. And for programming, it's kind of neat, I think. All right, so where was I? Oh, I was checking this stuff in, right? And I checked it in, and we're good. Moving on to the next step. Oh no, I had some changes. Oh no, I was working on this. Yes. Yes. So back to the last change we go. Oh, that's not the last change. Okay. Let's ask GitLens to show me the last change. Yes, 2662. Yeah, here's where I was. So right, explicitly, we haven't committed it yet. We're either a voting member or we're not, depending on if we're in the set or we are not. This one I need to fix, right? Because it should be remove that and put 11 back in. We're removing 2. We should not be a voting member anymore. Here we removed 11, but we are 2, so we're still a voting member. Oh, that would be GitHub, sorry. All the stuff like the raft is in my GitHub. Yep. Let me think about... Yeah, we're going to run this, right? I think this should already pass, right? I was just fixing the names of things. Yeah, okay. Let's continue. So they're applied on startup, whether we're voting or not. So I'll collapse those since we're done. No, but there's all the repos are there. Oh, you're interested in the JSON project. So the JSON's in the GitHub also. So, well, thanks for following, Android U. You'll find the JSON also in the GitHub. What's the question? You have no idea how to build it on your own? So I use CMake. And yeah, so my JSON library leverages 2 other libraries I wrote. So it's not so simple. You'd have to also build those as well. So you need all 3. And you could either use my CMake lists with CMake, or if you wanted to do it by hand, you just make a build system that compiles this source value.cpp. And you'd have to set up the include file, the include paths correctly to find my 2 other libraries and then the standard headers. And this is its own header file there. So if you've been trying to build it and you have problems, let me know. Yeah, mine is not header only. And Lohman's, I used his library for work in my previous job, and it was pretty cool. It was one of the things about my stream is that I wanted to do it myself from scratch. So yeah, if you have trouble using mine, the N Lohman's one, I do recommend that one as well. It's nice. Oh, you meant you have no idea how you would program it? Oh. Well, where's my browser? Here we go. So there was JSON.org is a really nice site, because it really breaks it down what you need to do in terms of state machines. And so if you want to do the step by step, you can start with something simple like number. Well, number's not simple. Okay, they're not simple. Well, you could do true, false, and null to start with. So you would start a program where you're given a sequence of characters, and if the sequence is true, TRUE or FALSE or NULL, then you would emit a JSON value that's one of these types. And then you just start to build off of that. Maybe you do a string next, right? There's where you might need Unicode. Or you could just not support Unicode at first and just support normal characters only. So it's just double quote a character, and then you loop until you get another double quote. And you just add these other branches as you get more comfortable with your code. But it's really just looping through a sequence of characters and updating a state machine, and at the end you just spit out what the value is. It's either a string, number, object, array, or one of these constants. So you don't know how to do the boxed thing. So, well, each of these boxes is just another state machine. So I generally would make each of these a function, and the functions can call each other, and they could actually be recursive, right? An array can contain a value. An array can contain a value which is itself could be an array, so they'll call each other. And yeah, so I've modeled each of these as a separate function, I believe, in my code. So let's see, for example, yeah, decode string, right? That's if we know it's a string, and then we have, there should be a decode arrays. Do I not have that? Oh, decode is integer, right? Decode is floating point. So the key is when you look at the first character, generally you'll know if the first character is a double quote, you can know that you need to call the decode string function. If it starts with either a minus or a 0 or a 1, 2 through 9, then it's a number, right? If it starts with a curly brace, it's an object. It starts out with a square bracket, or what do you call it? Just a bracket, then it's an array. So all my code is basically, yeah, parse a value. We're going to look at the very first character, I think. What was this parse value? Actually, I don't think this does what it says it does. That's just doing the Unicode stuff. I guess we would start from encoding. Yeah, so here we go. We get the first non-white space character, and then we and then the last one. This is do some trimming, and then we basically say if the first one's a brace, it's parse it as an object. If it's a bracket, it's an array. If it's a double quote, it's a string with some extra stuff to do Unicode handling. And then you can check the literals just by checking the strings if they match. And then, yeah, so I did this thing to figure out if it's a floating point or not. If it has one of these characters in it, it has to be a floating point number. Otherwise, it's an integer. And then, yeah, so you just break up the work into these separate functions. So once you get into here, the this is not a good example. Maybe floating point. So floating point was following this the number state machine. So each of these paths ends up being a state. So which path we're following is the state. So state 0 is we're right here, and the next thing could be a minus or it could not be. State 1 means either the 0 or 1, so we're at this point in state 1. So if I were to mark this up, 0 is here, 1, can you see my cursor? 0 is here, 1 is here, 2 is here, and 3 is, I think, over here. So each of the branch points becomes a state in your machine, and then you look at the next character and figure out what to do next. And you just loop that until you get out of characters, and then there are certain states that mean that you hit the end point if you hit any of these states. Otherwise, it's not valid. It does look complicated, but I would just do it one step at a time. You can just take this section and just pretend it doesn't exist. And now you're handling a subset of numbers, one that don't have exponents, right? And then you could take out this part, and now you're only handling integers. So you can just start with something simple, maybe just the integer part on the left here. And then once you have that working, add the other pieces. as you go. You don't have to do the whole state machine in one shot. Do it in small steps. If it gets too frustrating, maybe before trying to do JSON, do something easier like just parsing a number, just building up a number. I have an example of that actually. That was this other one, decode as integer. This to integer thing. It's a much simpler state machine. You have an optional minus, then you have either 0 or 1 through 9, and then you have 0 through 9s, and it's either successful or not. And then each digit you just convert to a number and add. No, you subtract off the from 0 to get the number, right? So there's just these elements maybe be a little bit easier to do for something simpler. Something that would be amazing is to give him the spec so you could use it as a guideline. Test specs. Oh, yeah. So, for example, the JSON. With test-driven development, your tests become the specs. So you could start from my test and just delete the bodies, and you can say, okay, how would you convert null into a JSON value? That should be easy. If a string is equal to that, it's null, otherwise it's not. And then you could do the other direction, and then you can try the booleans next. And then you just build off of there. Maybe you do numbers next. You check some bad numbers, floating point numbers, strings. It gets more and more complicated as you go down, but I think you find that you kind of build confidence by you start with the easy test cases and you just build up from there, and before you know it, you'll be on these more complicated ones. So yeah, how long do you think it'll take you to start on the game? Probably another month or two before I have enough infrastructure to actually have content. I want to get the game running with no content quickly and spend the next year or two actually putting content into the game and fleshing it out, because I want the game to be, for as long as possible, runnable so that my viewers on Twitch can actually play the game and give me feedback. So I'm trying to get there. It's just all this initial setup is going to take probably a month to get right. Literally the things I need to do, I'm being tracked here on to do, and you can see how much I've checked off in about a couple weeks, and the rest I'll have to check off before I really have the minimal set of tools and backend server to actually deploy onto the cloud. So if you actually watch this to-do thing, the moment I have everything checked off, then you'll probably be able to play the game, although you probably log in and there'll be nothing, only something like placeholder saying, this is where the game should be, but the game, there is no content yet. And then I'll probably transition from doing back-end work only to a combination of front-end work, back-end work, and game content, art, story, dialogue, and other things. So that'll be probably a month from now. Just guessing. Apply config non-voting member when committed. This is also not valid, right? It's not when it's committed, it's when appended. And so, yeah, I didn't even write this correctly. So we make an entry, but we don't put it in the log. We start out as a follower, and instead of committing it to the log, we need to actually append it. So that's append entries. This thing. Oh, wait a minute. Become follower does that for us. Oh, right, and I had that in there. Okay, never mind. So that's why it worked. So that was valid. It just doesn't read very well. Becoming a follower sends the entries. So yeah, okay, never mind. Because that is correct. I just didn't understand it. Maybe I should change the name. when appended by becoming follower. Oh, maybe I should just rename this become follower. Should be something like receive append entries from mock leader. That maybe is a bit more clear. Then if I read this, I'm like, okay, it will append the entries from a mock leader, and the arguments are leader ID. So 5 from leader 5, 5 is the leader. It's in term 6. This is going to send the mock entries. Okay, got it. All right. So append and config non-voting member single config when appended. Right. And it's a little bit more too. It's also stepped down. Maybe I should split this up. Let's split this up to be a little bit easier. So this should be step down. Step down from leadership once single config committed and not in cluster anymore. All right. So I can remove the voting member stuff. Really not relevant. And that retains all that stuff. And then this one just becomes oh, the setup is different. It's when appended. So I need to not put it in here, but I need to append it. So we become the leader, and the act is that we append. And we don't care about this. So it's server.append log entries, and then we can pass it off, right? Entry. And then that's a side effect. Then it becomes a non-voting member right away. And then all this stuff goes away. So when single, let's change this. Apply configuration. I need to reword this again. Let me reword this. Become non-voting member when leader and single config appended and not in cluster anymore. Hope Hideo isn't watching. You guys got confused? I'm getting confused. I'm trying to make these names so like when I read them, I understand what's going on. Become non-voting member when leader and single config appended and not in cluster anymore. Step down from leadership. One single commit committed and not in cluster anymore. Okay, these I like now. Those make sense. Apply config. Okay, I haven't done these yet. These are all new. Since these test the app, like when things are applied, that they're applied on startup and when appended. Oh, I should have one when appended as leader, or is that what this does? Yeah, all these tests together kind of test how configuration changes happen as soon as they're appended. So these ones can just focus on joint config. So I can remove the text about apply config. So voting member joint config, non-voting member joint config. Voting member should not vote for any candidate. Right. Follower vert config when rolling back before config change. Yes. And that I'm going to put last because it just feels better. These old tests I need to go back and change because they're, yeah, they have old code in them. It's not a configuration update, it's a persistent state update. Actually, I can persistent. Originally, I had put the current term in the configuration, but really that term is really should be just the what raft calls configuration, and then these are really called persistent state. So that's what those aren't configuration. That's persistent state, and these are configuration. Got it. Feels better, man. So it makes a little bit more sense, maybe. We have a lot of tests. It's what 109 tests now. 110. Okay. So this was test name refactoring. Reword test names and test and method names to make a little bit more sense. Hopefully. All right. So what's next here? Voting member joint config. So the easiest one would probably be that the it's just on startup. Yeah, on startup. So we'll pick one on startup here. And put it here. Let's see. We're making a joint configuration command now. And we'll say the it's a voting member in both. So let's say that this is the new configuration, and then there's an old configuration, which has all of them. And then so that to become a non-voting member, that happens if actually that doesn't happen. As soon as you receive the configuration, you're a voting member. It's when it starts up and it doesn't receive the new configuration yet because it's still catching up. Right. Okay, so yeah. I need to think about this. Maybe I'll remove that for now. I just want to make sure that it's either does this test even valid? Oh, I know what I can do. I can say it's like this, but it's not in either set. So it would be that it's not present in either set. Like that. So it should be not a voting member. So here the configuration changes. We're going from that to that. We're not in either set, so we're not a voting member. I should have a couple other combinations, right? Voting member from old configuration, from old config. voting member from new config, and then voting member in both configs, right? Voting member from both configs. Joint. So it's in both. It's in the new one. So let's say we go from that to that, and then from the old. So it starts there and we remove it. In all those cases, it's still a voting member because it's the joint configuration. It's in when it's in neither, it's non-voting. Okay, yeah. So those tests are ready to go. Build them and make them fail, and then we fix it. Right, so it's always a voting member, even in the case where it shouldn't be. So that's because we're not processing that command at all. It's this, is this right? Oh, okay, it gets a little bit more complicated here because we can't just have one cluster configuration. We have to recognize if we're operating with a joint configuration or not. So it would be if joint configuration, otherwise the old behavior. If it's a joint configuration, then it's if we're in either set, right? Actually, hold on. I can restructure this a bit. I can say, if it's not in the cluster configuration, then do something if it's a joint configuration. Otherwise, it's not a voting member. If it is in the configuration, then it is a voting member, right? So the special case here would be we search the new, I'm going to have a placeholder for the new config. Next cluster configuration, I think that's what we'll call it. If that, else that. So if we're not in the current configuration, if it's a joint configuration, then search the next. Otherwise, we're not a voting member. If we're searching the next, if we're not in the next configuration either, we're not a voting member. Otherwise, we are. Sounds good to me. So let's set up this joint configuration. So bool, false. This indicates whether or not the server, the cluster is transitioning from the current configuration to the next configuration. All right, and then, whoops, lost my place. Okay, then I need a placeholder for the next, right? This holds all configuration items for the server. Once the cluster, well, hold on. This holds all configuration items to be set for the server once the current configuration transition is complete. Right, so we'll call it next. Because now the variables are in place. It still is going to fail because we don't know it's in a joint configuration. That we get from seeing the command for it. I want to make sure I didn't break anything. So it's still the joint thing. So it's when we apply, not when we advance the commit, but when we set the last index here, else if the command type is joint configuration. Then it's a slightly different command, right? It's joint configuration command. And then we're going to set the... Okay, the old configuration should match the current. Should we set it anyway? We should probably set it anyway. And then we'll set the next. And then we call this onset. And the onset does that part. So let's see if that worked. It didn't work. 2832. It's in the new one, so why did it say no? Is my logic wrong here? It's not, okay, so it's not in the old. Oh, I forgot to set that flag. That's what I did wrong. So it's, we have to set it, that flag. There we go. I knew I missed something. My hands are cold. Warm up, hands, warm up. Yay, we did it. We did it. So this is just a recognition that we're in a joint configuration state. We're not handling joint configuration properly yet in terms of voting and applying log entries. So that's more test cases to add. So recognize when in joint configuration state. All right. And then push that. Apologies for the dog barking, but people come and go and the dog likes to welcome them home every single time, even if they only went out for a minute. Don't you love dogs? All right, so non-voting. Oh, I guess we should do this next. We should prevent them from voting. So we'll set up a situation where we receive a vote request. So here's the prototypical case of receiving a vote request, right? So we just need to set them up as a non-voting member. So to do that, where's the non-voting member? This one. We can simplify it a bit. Actually, yeah, this is maybe a good case. But wasn't there a startup one? Oh yeah, I don't have a case for this. Let me fix this. So it's when there is nothing in the log at all. So oh, and I need to fix the that commit index doesn't make sense, does it? What was this used for anyway? It just said it? I think there's no reason for us to set it anywhere else. So that doesn't actually make sense. Yeah, none of that made sense. Okay, cool. So let's see, the one I wanted to add was, it's like, that, not that it's applied, it's either it's non-voting member on startup, no config, or no log entries at all. So like this one, only slightly different. So the difference would be non-voting member on startup no log. So there we just set it to, it just isn't in the cluster at all, and there is no command. So I need to have that, because that's, I want to have that startup, because that's a simpler startup. Or here. What's the test to implement ratio for the raft project now? 3:1? Oh, the test implementation? Let's see. 2900. So it's, yeah, it's getting kind of long. 2:1. So it's 2:1. I think it's because I'm doing a lot of the same things over and over again that I should be moving into the fixture as helpers. And that would actually help it be more readable as well. Yeah, I bet you this file is just long because there's a lot of redundant setup. A lot of this is redundant setup that I could probably refactor away. That's more a sign that my tests need to be refactored more than that I'm testing too much. But there are a lot of different sequences of events that we have to test, so it could also be an indication that raft is complex. And to reduce the complexity, I suppose if we wanted to, we would break up the raft server into different pieces. Like maybe you'd have a component that just handles elections, another one that just handles a log, and then once you decouple those, maybe the test ratios would be reduced. I could put that as a note to consider. That's a good thing to consider. So I'll start with your prompt, because that made me think about it, and then consider if server should be split up into smaller subcomponents to reduce test to implementation ratio. And also I wanted to consider if server tests should be refactored to, again. Let me consider both of those. One or the other or both might be wise to do, because yeah, you want to get the test ratio more 1-to-1. I'm not too hung up on that, to tell you the truth. But that might be it because I have a bad habit of just keeping going even though the file's getting way too long. We're already at way longer than it should be. Like a general rule of thumb is you want each module to be no more than like 800 lines. So we're at 1453 lines. It's kind of getting too big, right? And then the test ratio being too high. Yeah, these are all signs that I need to refactor. All right, I added that test case about no log. I'm not sure if this passes yet, but I need it to pass. It's going to be a foundation for the other test. Yeah, it doesn't pass yet, so let me fix that. That's when it starts up in Mobilize. Not only do we want to set the last index, we also want to kind of apply, let's have a helper called apply configuration. And we'll actually pass it in as cluster configuration. And so that will take the place of this one here. Which means we'll never apply a joint configuration, which makes sense. It needs to be in the log. But without the presence of a log, this is sort of like the default configuration. So we'll move that up here. Yeah, that's a good enough place. I made it lowercase by accident. Oh well. I'll fix it in a second. And then we need to pass it in. So this guy here. Hold on. Oh, I thought there was someone at my desk asking me for something, but it's just someone walking by. You don't mind large files rather than the large number of small files? Oh, you don't like the large number of small files? I guess there's a spectrum, right? If they're too small and there are just a lot of them, it could be a sign that the project is just disorganized. If you have too few files and they're really large, it's also another form of misorganization, right? You kind of want a nice balance. A medium number of files of medium size is best. Or if it's a very simple component, you'd have a small bunch of small files. Okay, this set the cluster configuration. That's basically all we're doing, right? And this is the configuration to set. Actually, we want to call it from everywhere this is actually done, right? Where this assignment is done. So there as well. And in both places, right? And then this one takes the old. There we go. Apply configuration. So apply configuration. We'll assume that it's not joint. Like that other place we were just at said, it'll start at a false and then it'll immediately set it back to true, which is fine. So set it to false. People put things like enum power off, on off in its own file. Yeah, that's a little bit too granular. Too granular, right? I think the worst I've done is something like, no. This, maybe. This is too small. I put this in its own file because it's used by two... It's like a shared dependency between two other objects. And I didn't want a circular dependency between the two objects. So the general rule is if you have like A and B depend on each other, then really you need to take B and split it into a B and a B prime. Right? Apologies for the syntax highlighting. Maybe if I do, yeah, if I do that, it looks better. So that's a problem. Solution is first to break it up. Then now A will depend on B, and A depends on B and B prime. B depends on B prime only, and B prime depends on nothing. This is a general procedure for any kind of solving any kind of circular dependency. Is first you identify what can you take out of B, which is the codependency part, so that you can have A depend on both, B only depend on B prime, and then so there's no cycle anymore. So from A you go to B and B prime, B you go to, oh, this should be, I should use a different notation. So this means break up B into two parts, B and B prime. And then these are the new dependencies are A depends on B and B prime. I'm just writing it here, I'll put it in my notebook. B depends only on B prime. B prime depends on nothing. I say B prime and not C just to emphasize that it used to be part of B and then you broke it out. So this whole explanation, the cluster configuration is the B prime in this case, and it's shared by, I think it was server and log entry. So yeah, so they wouldn't be codependent. Let me pull that out. Thanks for the follow, by the way, Harlem Dad. Harlem Dad, are you living in Harlem? Let me say add to the appropriate place in the notebook. Appropriate place in the notebook. And this thing. Okay. I kind of want to make a video. Oh, what happened there? OneNote is misbehaving. Let's tell it to paste as text only. I kind of want to make a video. I have a list of video ideas, like coding tip ideas, and actually I should add that to it right here right now. Example, maybe more than one, of how to break cyclical dependencies. example this text again. Actually, then I don't need to put it in the log for today. So I think what I'll do is I'll make a short video showing examples of that and how to do that as like a coding tip. So cool, that's where it should have been added. Anyway, long-winded example, or well, long-winded answer, sorry about that. Okay, so request vote. I'm lost. What was I doing? Let's get reoriented. Build everything and then run the tests. That'll help me get reoriented. This is what happens when you get old. Sometimes you get confused. All right, on startup. Yes. On startup, we're applying the configuration. So the idea is that we want to apply the configuration and we need to figure out, wasn't there like an on configuration applied? Onset cluster configuration, right. Onset cluster configuration. Is that what we want to call here? All right, here, yeah, okay. We don't want to call it from apply because it could be that we need to do extra stuff. Actually, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking of making an overload. Yes, I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to make an overload. So that'll actually read easier too. If we have a two argument overload, it's applying a joint configuration. So this will all go into the overload for that. So then it's kind of like this. Actually, I like this a lot easier, a lot better, because we'll have the old and the new. Long names. I apologize for the long names. I like long names though. Okay, so this is an overload. Set the cluster configuration. Set a single cluster configuration, and then this will be a joint configuration. And not that kind of joint. Stop thinking about that. Anyway, this is the current, and this is the next. Should I use the same words? Yeah, I think I'll use the same words. So that's cluster, it's cluster config. And next. It matches a little bit better. Okay, now in both places, here's the trick. On both places I call set, and now I don't call set there anymore. Make sense? So in either case, we'll go through this logic every time we make any kind of change, single or joint. Yay! Yay! I like it when a plan comes together. Okay, okay, there's a bunch of cleanup here. Let me check that in separately. What happened here? Oh, shoot. Okay, so really that line that's the only one we need. Okay, yeah, now it makes more sense. Yeah, okay. Sometimes Git gets confused. That line. That was just me not understanding what the heck I was doing. So server tests. No need to set commit index on mock log. Raft log. The commit index is write only from the perspective of the log. That's because, I'll just say it, because the commit index is not persistent. We're giving it to the log as a way for it to, in the architecture, and the algorithm doesn't describe this, but I anticipate and this isn't even up to date, but I need to update the diagram. But in the update diagram, the raft server's log is implemented in terms of the journal. So it'll be the line connecting these two. And then the journal will basically tell the executor when entries are committed, so the executor can go and then apply them to the state machine. And so that's why the journal needs to be told when the commit index advances, but it's only to tell the executor, but it doesn't actually save it, so it's not persistent. So there's no reason for anyone to actually ever ask to get it back. That makes sense. So that's that. And this is all the other change, right? Yes, okay, so commit that. And then this is handling joint configuration. No, it's not. This is applying the config. This is a bit of refactoring first. Do the refactoring separate. Yeah, so let's do the refactoring separate. So stage everything and then unstage the new code, which is this one. Unstage that hunk. So this is refactoring. Basically extracting methods for applying configuration. Yes, server refactoring. Extract apply configuration methods. And the reason why I extracted them is because I used them in this new feature here, which is apply default configuration on mobilize before processing log. Well, actually, it's we just have to do it there. We don't process the log until the leader tells us, right? Leader tells us when the append entries is called. Then we'll apply everything up to that point. Sounds good to me. Right, and this is the test case. We detected by a non-voting member on startup without a log should behave correctly. And this is new. Let me not stage this one yet. Stage lines. Okay, yes, that's good. This one we're not done yet. Okay, so that one I haven't finished filling this in. We need to have it actually receive a vote and then check. Okay, this is old code. We want to make sure it does not respond to the vote request. So this actually turns into expect it to be empty. Right, so that's gonna fail, and we'll have to fix it. So that's a simple fix. Basically, we will ignore any vote requests if we're a non-voting member. I don't actually know if we need this use case, because even if we did respond to the vote, the candidate should ignore it because it's a non-voting member. But it's maybe a good thing to have. So there's the requirement is set. Now we have to implement it. So it's on receive a request vote. Right. So we will not respond if we are a non-voting member. If shared is non-voting, if not a voting member, return. Simple enough. How am I doing in regards to my plan today? I added that, although it's not called provisional, it's just called, let me change this. Is voting member flag. Okay, we've done that, we haven't done that. This is just a given. Okay, so I'm on track to getting at least this done for today, and I have another hour to go. Yeah, so my original guess was that I'd probably get this much done today, which might be pretty accurate. This is the hopeful goal, and the more conservative goal is to get this much done today. All right, good. So that passed, right? It passed. So let's check that in. I like to do incremental check-ins. So server. Do not respond. Do not vote in elections if... how about non-voting members should not vote in elections? I still have a bit of a lingering cough from the cold I had over the holidays. All right, so I think, let's see, this next one is non-voting members should not start a new election. So I'll take a previous test case where it does start an election. Let's collapse this so I can read the individual names. I think we'll take this one. Yes. Oh, what did I do here? Did I paste it in the wrong place? I did. Okay, paste it here. So we just make it a non-voting member. So it's just not in the cluster configuration yet. We start it, and here instead of expecting it's a candidate, we'll expect it is still a follower, and we'll expect that it did not send any messages. So expect messages sent empty. Right? By the way, this is an example of how readable I want these test cases to be. So it's that the other test cases are not that readable. That's a clue. This is the standard I want to set for raft unit tests. The arrange, act, and assert being no more than like 3 or 4 lines long, if possible. Very clearly, we're setting a cluster configuration with these servers in it, and we're setting a server that we're testing with as not in that set. We mobilize it, and then we advance the time to be past the maximum election timeout. Basically to say, by now it should have timed out, and it would raise an election if it's supposed to. This is a backdoor test framework method to ask the server to, basically it synchronizes with the server. It waits until the server has actually run one of its worker loop. It's run its one loop of its worker thread. Basically, that allows it time to have processed this fact, and then we check to make sure it is still a follower and not a candidate. So yeah, I want all the tests to be that readable. The ones that are not, like, these are sort of okay. This is getting too this is an example of one that's too complicated. If I can't fit it on one screen, then I need to refactor that. Don't feel like refactoring today, though. I kind of feel like refactoring should be its own day, therefore, because some people like to see refactoring and other people don't. So I like to reserve a whole day for refactoring, so when you see that, oh, my stream is going to be about refactoring, then you either watch or you won't, and not get surprised midstream when I say, hey, let's refactor now. Be like, no, I hate refactoring. All right, so it should have been a follower. Instead, it became a candidate and it sent out vote requests. So we have to stop that. It should not be becoming a candidate. So there's a candidate, step up as candidate. So we don't want step up candidate to be called. Basically, we don't want start election to be called. if it's non-voting member. So it's simple as this. So we will add another case to this. Before checking if the timeout has occurred, we'll just simply check if it's a non-voting member. If shared is voting member and a timeout occurred. I could reset the election timeout, I guess, but it doesn't really make sense. Because we're not really waiting for anything if we're a non-voting member. At least not yet. Ooh. It became a leader? Oh no. Okay, the step down isn't working. Step down from leadership once single config not in cluster anymore. Wait a minute. Expected to be leader and it became a follower right away. Okay, 2796. What did I screwed up one of the tests. 2796. Okay. Let me print out. This is something you could do with Google Test. Because it was in a loop, and I wanted to see, well, how many responses triggered that to happen. I can say responses and then print it out. I can do the same thing in both. All right, let's run that again. I have no idea how I broke that, but this is why we have unit tests. When I break things, the tests kind of catch it for me. Okay, we got on one response, we became a follower right away. That should not have happened. Because one does not make a majority. Okay, let me see this in the debugger. So we'll take the name of this test case, and then we go to the debugger configuration. For gtest filter, we plug it in there. And let's set a breakpoint. It's going to be when it receives the results, right? This one. So let's set a breakpoint there. Let's go. So so it's on the first response it's happening, right? Yeah, so it's on the first response. So let's see what's going on. Wait a minute. How do we become a... What did I do? It didn't become a leader? Become leader. It stepped down even before it received the results. Oh, I know what it is. I think. Actually, no, I don't. I don't know. Let's run that test and just inspect it. So the server will show up under server tests here. Server. And implementation. Shared election state. Follower. Okay, it should be follower. And then I hit go. It's still a follower. Oh, I know why. It became a leader. It can't become a leader now because it's not in the cluster config. Yeah, okay. This test isn't valid. It needs to become a leader, and then we need to append the entry that has the single configuration. So this has to happen after. All of this has to happen after it becomes leader. So it becomes leader. Include the term. I become the leader of that term, and then Right, and then apply the configuration. So it's server.append log entries entry. So it will still be a leader, but it will be not in the cluster anymore. So it should behave correctly by stepping down only when it's been committed. See, yep, I'm very happy that I have these unit tests because I would have not caught that bug until later. Now I can catch it before I even integrated it. Yay. Okay. So let me check in the new feature first, and then I'll check in the bug fix. Well, it's really a test fix. Right, so that's that server. Non-voting members should not start elections. Okay, and then this is a test fix. Server test fix. Fix a problem with the test. I'm not going to repeat the name of the test because it's really long. And we'll just describe the problem. To be a leader that steps down once a configuration change is committed, the configuration change needs to be appended after the leader, after the server becomes the leader. Otherwise, the server could not have become the leader in the first place. So this broke because I added the requirement that you can't actually start an election in the first place if you're not in the cluster config, which broke this test. So the test was wrong. I needed to fix the test. Just tried to fork the Git client. Looks amazing. Has dark mode, many of the things you do. Git fork? Let me try that after the stream. I'm always looking for new Git clients because I'm still stuck in Git GUI because I'm not comfortable with any of the other GUIs out there, but I'm always looking to try new things. So thank you for the suggestion. I'll try that later. Thank you, thank you. Although I'm not too unhappy, I guess the thing that I don't like anymore about Git GUI is that doesn't have a dark theme. It doesn't have a dark theme that's easy to set up. I was reading about how I could do it and it seemed very elaborate and hokey. Commit line width setting. You can do that in VS Code also, by the way. I saw that yesterday. I don't know if you know this, but if you look for where is it? Can I search for multiple things? Yeah. Input validation length. You get a warning if your commit message is too long. So it's kind of like a guide. I think there's also a way to show a guide. Yeah, you can get an editor ruler at the same number or different number of characters. So it's like I would use the Git stuff in VS Code if it understood my multi-repo configuration, but it doesn't. So yeah, that's one of the requirements I have, and Git GUI barely meets that requirement. The requirement of the length is just that I just size this window really should be smaller. I size it so that if it gets too long, when it gets to the edge, I'll know. But it would be even nicer if it had a ruler, or if it gave me a warning. Everything's up to date. Okay. I guess we're moving on to the next test. Non-voting member from startup no config. Oh, didn't I have that? I just did that, didn't I? Up here? collapse. Yeah, no unbutting member on startup, no log. Yeah, so that's redundant. Okay, so that means we're just reduced to this follow or revert config. Oh, that's a hard one. The thing I'd like to do there is right now the log entry for a single configuration. How do I show that? The HTTP header file. It has just a single one, but we could have an old and a new, and we could just use the old only when we're rolling back. Actually, do we even need that? Oh yeah, we do. It's a very contrived case. It would be this sequence of events. A is elected leader. A submits joint configuration. We'll just say configuration old new. Well, let's just say submit would be append. Sends append of to B. A crashes, so it doesn't get committed. And then D, just not to be confused with this C, but D, elected leader. D appends different entry, overwriting C old new. So at this point, we should apply C old new, right? At this point, we should roll back and apply C old, right? Actually, we have the old there. Maybe that's the trick. Okay, so this we can handle fine as it is. But what if we're in this situation? A is elected leader. Okay, a little bit more than this. Commits. A commits entry. A commits. So no, we don't actually have to do anything. But then it sends an append of C new. So at that point we apply C new, right? But it crashes and this doesn't get committed. D is elected the leader and it appends a different entry overriding new. So how the problem is, how do we get old? Old isn't in the C new log entry unless we were to capture it, like we have an old configuration that we only use when we are overriding the log. The alternative is that the server in question would have to go back to the beginning of the log. Worst case, it'd be all the way to the beginning and then replay everything up to, but not including the overwritten entry. Yeah, but that sounds like a nightmare. I'd rather just put the old config in here, just so that servers that need to roll back can. Then we can basically iterate backwards and reapply old configurations as we go. So this we already have old, so we already have it here. Here we just add it to this one. I think I can get rid of provisional configuration now. I don't think I actually need that. Let me put that in the notes. I need to make sure I don't really need it. Review design and make sure we don't actually need provisional configuration command. If we don't, remove it. It's dead code, I think. Or I might just keep it around until I have the whole reconfig done and I've proven that we don't need that. Anyway, I think I've just convinced myself that I need to store the old config here. So let me put that in my notebook first. Notes on why we need to keep C old around, even in single configuration command. And here we'll put the notes. Case, text only. There we go. All right. Okay. So working backwards from the requirement. So I need to basically arrange this to happen. We can kind of collapse these together by the mock leader can have 2 entries and then just announce that the first one's already committed. And then we don't actually have to do a crash. We can just simulate another leader gets elected and tries to apply a different entry. Yeah, okay. Oh, did I trigger you? Or did I wake you up, Seagull? Single and Seagull? That's kind of like my phone wakes up sometimes. It thinks that I'm saying, "Hey Siri." And it just woke up. Sometimes I'll say something different and it'll think I said, "Hey Siri." Alright, so this arrangement is so it's similar to one of these followers, right? So one of these. So I'll take this. No, I didn't call you out. Sorry. You can go back to lurker, dumb. I give you my wave. Any excuse I can take to spam my my new emote, I'll use it. That's right. I have like a wave emote that playing with scissors helped me out with. I also have sub badges too. Looks like I passed the 6-month point in streaming, so now I have a gold gear instead of a silver gear. Alright, so we're pasting here, right? So what am I setting up here? We have to append and okay, 2 entries. So entry 1, entry 2. Okay, so there's a joint and then a single. So we'll call it joint command. I'll spell it out. Single config command. And then this has an old and a new, right? So old, we need to make sure it matches this. So we're removing server 2. You got a new emote from someone, but it's not very usable. That, you know what that reminds me of? There was a game called Agent USA. You know this game? This was such a fun game back in the day. Agent USA. So the enemies in the game were, or the big enemy in the game was a walking TV with, can I show that bigger? Walking TV with static on the image, on the screen. Called the Fuzz Bomb. I can't get a big picture, oh well. Tiny picture it is. You can kind of see it here. That's what that emote reminds me of, the Fuzz Bomb. Alright, new, oh, this needs to be joint. Not that kind of joint. Yeah, ask him next time. Ask him if he knows Agent USA, and then use that emote. Alright, single, so we're, right, so this is C new, that's C new, that's C old, that matches my notebook, right? Yes, so the idea is we want to get back to that. So, right, entry 1 is the joint config command. Entry 2 is the same term, so it's going to be same term leader, and then a single command. And does it can be, no, we don't want it in the log. We want it to, what's this receive append entries? Oh, it pulls it from the mock. Is this what I want? I guess so. So the fact that it's in the mock log entries, that means the follower will have the entries in their log to begin with. That's fine. So I just need to add something in here. I want it to show up as being committed already. So right, it's this thing that we want to default. Can I default it like this? I don't remember if I can do that. I can't. Okay. Shoot. I guess I can just require it. So add that here. And we'll just reuse this. Entry 1, entry 2. Okay, so yeah, I already had. So instead, so who's going to be leader? 5, I guess. 6. Yeah, okay, got it. Okay, but instead we won't commit both of them. We'll just commit the first one. That's important because then we have to make a new append entries come from a different leader, and it should basically change it back to be a voting member again. That's what I'm leveraging. So we're going to make a new append entries. So yes, this was the arrange, and then the act is that we cause an append entries from a different leader in a new term to cause it to roll back the commit. No, it's not going to roll back the commit. It's going to append the new entry. So here we say it is term 7. The leader commit is still 1. And then we're going to put something in the log. How do I do this again? Oh, right, it's there. Entry 1. No, entry 3, or 2B. Let's make it 2A and 2B. And we'll just have entry 2B be an empty command in term 7. All right, so this is just 2B. And the previous will be 1, and the term of that was 6. And then it's pick a new leader, 6, I guess. The last one was 5. Okay, so a new leader comes in, says, hey, by the way, starting after index 1, we'll have entry 2B instead of 2A, which is fine because 2A was never committed. But 2A had a configuration command in it, so we need to roll it back. So if 2A is applied, then we're not a voting member anymore. But now that it's rolled back, we should be, so we should expect true. That's the test case. Contrived as concisely as I can make it. And it passes. It shouldn't have passed. What did I do wrong? Old, new. Okay, let me watch this in a debugger. It should not have passed. Dang it. Things have got to rightfully fail when they're supposed to. Okay, get rid of that. Debugger, debug. We don't need abort, do we? Well, no, I'll keep it in there. It's a nice safety net to have. Put a breakpoint here and tell it to go. It didn't run. Okay, what did I do? What did I do wrong? What did I do? Whoa. Did it crash? I don't understand. Where? Okay, what is this? Unable to open exe common INL? Okay, I think I need to restart VS Code. It got confused, I think. Oh, it's still loading. No, it's just confused. If you set a breakpoint on a test, you can debug the single test by clicking. Yeah, that's true. I need to get used to that. So you're saying I should be able to go to this guy and find that test in there. It's not as convenient for me because I have such a huge number of tests. All were revert. This one, right? Something wrong with the debugger though. Like, I don't know where it is now. It's the tools are broken. I think I need to completely close VS Code and run it again. Maybe I forgot to build? Oh, that might have been it. It did not build because I screwed something up. Ah, yeah. This didn't build. I guess I called this more than once. Yeah, that's the problem. Let me make an overload of this. So I don't have to change it in all these places. So we'll just make an overload of this that calls the other one. With no leader commit, it just calls this by getting the leader commit from the mock log. Entries.size. Like that. I can break this up. If your long test method names, that messes everything up. Yeah. Okay, so build this to make sure it compiles. Now we're good to go. But I'll try to get into the habit of this. It's taking me a bit of time to find it. That's the only problem. This one. Okay, cool. So when we get to that point, let's make sure it's in the correct state. It's a follower. It is a voting member. But after this, it should not be a voting member anymore. Not a voting member anymore. Okay. Whoa. Lost my context there. Still not a voting member. Okay, it keeps resetting my window. Maybe it's replaying from the beginning every time. Maybe that's the bug. I mean, it'll work then. That might be why it passed the test, but it will be inefficient. So that would be in append entries. This one up here. Okay, so got the one entry, empty command term 7. Update current term, sure. There's a leadership announcement. Reverse to follower. Advanced commit index. Still 1. Just applied to 3 jobs starting this new off. Good to go. Or good job, Above Siegel. You are good to go in your career, I think, if you applied to 3 jobs. The only problem you might have is where 2 companies will both want to hire you and you won't be able to pick between the 2. But that's what I call a good problem to have. Good problems to have. Okay. We're assembling our response here. Success. Oh, this is just looking for conflicts. Oh, the term didn't match. Why is the login deck? Why is it 2? Oh no, 2 is correct. Oh, wait a minute. What is this doing? This conflict should only... Oh no, this is... No, it's doing the right thing. It should conflict found. It'll roll back to index 1. Right, so then push back the new entry. So now the log should have the joint configuration, but not the single one. Is that the problem? I think that's the problem. Yeah, okay, the test is just bad. I figured it out just by thinking. Just by the power of my mind. The problem is this set is in both, so this really didn't do anything. I need to actually have it so it starts out as a voting member and is no longer one. Applying to the job sucks. Yeah, it's kind of rough. Yeah, but you're gonna be a pro at interviewing when you're done. Excuse me. Okay, yeah, this test is not set up right. Delete, I guess. There we go. So if we wanted to go from, I guess we can just do single configurations. We would just remove it straight out. So actually, I can simplify this a little bit then, right? If I don't need this joint config at all. So we just have 1A and, or we'll just call it 1 and 2. That's what we'll do. So 1 is that it has a configuration command. This 2 is that it's not. But 2 will be in term 7. So we'll start off with 1 entry. And then we'll roll back to previous is 0. And it's entry 2. You hate the whole write a comma separate list of all your skills? Oh yeah, like getting your resume up to date. I kind of don't like that either because I always feel like I'm being disingenuous when I write a list of languages and like I know some of those languages I'm not so good at, but other ones I'm better at. I kind of feel like I should be ranking them and be honest, like, I know these languages better than these other ones. But then you're also advertising yourself, so you kind of want to be, shine the best light on yourself, right? So it's a bit of a struggle. Actually, when you mentioned Stack Overflow, when I was an interviewer, my last job, one of the things that was most important to me to find in a candidate is, do they know what to do when they don't have an answer or they get stuck? So I would get either I'd ask them explicitly, like, what would you do if you can't find the answer to a question? Or I would get them into a situation where they didn't know, and I would say, well, what would you do next to get unstuck? And if they mention Stack Overflow, that's great. If they mentioned asking for help from a coworker, that's okay. But yeah, I'd actually look for people who know what to do to look things up and know about resources that are out there to help out. Yeah, BSing. I prefer honesty actually, but yeah, when you have to market yourself and shine the best light, yeah, it's kind of uncomfortable, isn't it? I think this is a more accurate test. So we just get a log entry that says you shouldn't be here, and then a new leader comes in saying, no, you should be here. So this will fail, right? Properly fail, like I've been wanting it to do. What's BS? Oh, so it's such an innocent question. I don't want to curse on stream, but bullshite. There. It's not an American curse. It's when it's made up garbage. Bullcrap. There you go. Yeah, you got it. Okay, so it properly fails. It should have reverted to being a voting member. So how do we fix this? So working the problem backwards, I will want to have the old configuration back when we roll back, right? Roll back. So before we roll back, we'll scan in reverse order the configuration. So let's make a helper for this. I had apply. What did I call it? Is it set last index? Actually, that's one thing we could do. And then we could have it, yeah, because we have the possibility of rolling back. So when conflict happens, let's have it roll back by doing a set index to that -1, right? And we roll back and we append the new entries. We'll end up calling set last index again, but that's fine. So we'll just need to have extra code in here. So it's if we're either going forwards or backwards, right? So if new last index is less than the current index, then we're rolling back. Otherwise, we're going forward. And we might not move anywhere at all. In which case, we never go into this loop because it'll be from a greater number to equal than a smaller number. So it'll just never go in that loop. Either way. And actually, let's... Do I use this variable? I do, but I could put it here. I just want to move this out, actually. I want to do this at the end. And then we're moving backwards. So size ti equals the current last index. Actually, why don't I just put that here? So it's from index, and then I is greater than or equal to new last index, minus I. And now here we'll do it in reverse order. So same kind of deal, only it's in reverse. If there's no command, skip it. If it's a joint configuration, it's easy. We just flip these two, right? No, hold on. We can't, it's not allowed to go from one joint configuration to another, so it's always applying an old configuration. The problem is where we want to apply an old configuration for here. That doesn't exist. So we need to add that. So to add that, I need to put it in, well, it belongs in the log entry, right? So log entry has its own tests. So that's part of serializing and all that. So we'll add that to its unit tests. So I don't know. Let's put 5 in there. And then I guess I am ending up making it looking like a joint configuration, aren't I? Let me think about this. Do I want to say new here and make that new? No. Because this is only for reference if we're going back. I'm going to leave it the way it is. Yes. Okay, so if that is there, then we will expect to find them here. Okay. So then to make these build, I need this to exist, so I put it here. And then it's going to fail those tests. We should see that right now, actually. So that I'll just filter on log entry star. That's right, it's not serializing them anymore because it's got the old configuration sets aren't in there. So let's add them. So it's basically this. Old instance IDs. Old configuration. So old instance IDs, old configuration. Insert that. And then the encode. Dun dun dun. This here. There and there. And that. So verify that works first. That works, and so the rollback should work now. Oh, infinite loop. Did I not do the going back correctly? Let's see. Greater than subtract 1. Actually, I don't know what's going on, so let's see that in the debugger. Why waste time when I can just have the debugger tell me? Go, debugger, go. And then it sits there in that infinite loop. So then I hit break. Where are you? Okay. Tell me more. What's I? Some huge number. What's last index? 1. New index 0. Oh, hey. Who was it in the chat earlier that said underflow is a problem? Yeah, so this is a problem. I'm underflowing and it's a large number. I'm guilty as anybody for making this mistake. It's because it's a size t. So what did I say about this? Easy way is to just use int. So we just have to incur the penalty of a conversion here. And that should be fine. Now it shouldn't infinite loop. Still not working though. It's not. It should have become a voting member again. Oh, that's because I didn't fill in the correct old configuration, right? So that's here. Old instance IDs. Is this? Well, I guess we can just repeat it. It's actually old configuration instance IDs, isn't it? There we go. I should probably wrap up soon because it's almost 4 hours and I'm getting tired. So right now my schedule is 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific, so probably gonna stay that way for a while. If I ever move to like an 8-hour schedule, it's still gonna be like 4 hours at a time because I need a break. But yeah, for now I'm on a 20-hour a week streaming schedule. So I'll probably wrap up soon and just continue this tomorrow. But yeah, it's working, so let's check that in. Let me go reevaluate the plan. So first things first, we'll add the old configuration and its tests. So we'll say log entry, add old configuration to single configuration command. Okay, that's that. And now this one, right, that we should roll back, support rolling back. So server, correctly roll back uncommitted configuration commands. Cool. Nice. Am I out of tests to do? They're all filled in now? They all have pluses next to them? I didn't skip any? I have a feeling like I might have some holes in here. It looks like they all have a body, so we're good. Don't know why I can't find that file. Anyway, according to my plan, where am I? I've done this much. Do I have time to do this? API to start configuration process. Provide new configuration set. This is set. We don't need the. Oh, we might need that. Oh, okay. This is going to be a bit more work because we have to have the leader catch up new servers before starting the joint configuration. Body equals to do. Oh, I should search for that. Nope. Actually, I could look for to-dos. Don't count that. Why does this have a... Oh, because I don't want to replace. There we go. Oh yeah, that is something I need to remove. Potential optimization, yes. This is my first attempt to do live reconfiguration in the servers. This is gonna get changed. Yeah, I need to do that. And there's a whole bunch of stuff from this really old code that I did before streaming that I was terrible at. I would do this because I would get lazy. Need documentation. Ugh, I hate doing that. Yeah, I think that's actually stale. I can remove that. There's no more to-dos in the tests for the server, so I'm good. All right. So this is going to be a bit of work, so I kind of don't want to start on it if I am almost out of time for today. We'll resume work tomorrow on this stuff, I think. So I got about halfway through the plan, which is good. So this will be like the plan for tomorrow. If you're interested in seeing the changes to raft and then to joint consensus stuff, now that we have all the groundwork about non-voting membership and configuration processing, so that will facilitate this work tomorrow. Yeah, I'll be on tomorrow 10 a.m. hopefully. Hope you guys enjoyed today. If not, that's cool. I understand. This might not be for everybody. I'm just looking to see who we can host. Picking another gaming streamer or another game dev or dev streamer. I guess we could say hi to Irish John Gaming. Copy that. Back to the VODs. Fair enough, Bugfound. So I'm gonna be raiding Irish John. So if you haven't seen him, he is working in a game in Unity. It's like a pirate ship PvP battle. It looks pretty cool. I like the graphics a lot. Not sure how much of the art he does, but the game is pretty functional. I think he's getting people to test it, load test and such. And actually, I should see if he's still going or if he's wrapping up. Oh, wait a minute. He's not doing dev streaming. He's playing a game, PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. I'd rather rate someone who's doing doing development. How about okay, instead, just a sec. I should do what I should have done before. Make sure he's dev streaming. Okay, so we're gonna instead I'm going to raid Jolt Jab. He is working on animation right now, but in the past I've watched him work on game dev. I think it was in Unity, but I wasn't sure. But it's interesting stuff. Looks like he's animating a model. So yeah, hope you enjoyed today's stream. I will go raid him now. Let me get set up for that. I wish there was like a single button I can hit. All right, we're gonna raid Jolt Jab. See you guys later. Hope you enjoy, and I'll see you tomorrow.